And you know how awful it feels. God damn it, Jeffrey, I'm busy. Sorry. He left his small town for the bright lights of Hollywood, survived every tragedy, beefed with every organization, and did shameful things just to be here tonight.
To share with you inspiring stories and tips on how to survive post-pandemic life.
By being your most authentic self. Coming to you from downtown Albuquerque, the Evans Explosion Show. And welcome to the Evans Explosion Show. I'm your host, Evans Explosion. And the explosion is more than just my name. The explosion is really a feeling of progressive thinking that breaks stigmas. Stigmas that are in many ways holding us back from being complete happy people. One misconception is that having an open relationship is a bad thing. Relationing yourself is wrong, and to be a truly happy person, then you must keep your jewels to yourself the rest of the time. But is that what love is really like in 2021? Or is it like Jason Derulo says, savage? Did you know that the Nazis, just like the Proud Boys, shame younger men from pleasuring themselves? Because when somebody doesn't experience the explosion, then a guy will go crazy. Now, you could argue that women have the same sexual desires as men, but I don't see that many deadbeat moms around, do you? So if you and your partner had an open relationship, maybe you would at least know that your partner is getting what they need sexually from somebody else, while saving the love that they really have for you. Because no matter if your spouse is Jennifer Aniston, Cardi B, your spouse is prone to cheating. We're gonna get bored. That's how our minds work. Our minds wander. We always want what we can't have. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe then we will be more satisfied with our relationships. And then we can actually have relationships that actually last. I know that it's uncomfortable to think about, but growth usually is. And you know how awful it feels to be told to stay inside and not be able to do the things that you want to do. Would you ever want to make anybody else feel like that? Think about it, and we'll be right back after this break. welcome back to the Evans Explosion Show. I have a real treat for us today. Our guest today is the podcast host of the Core Confidence Life podcast, and he's also a dear friend of mine. I welcome Dennis R Sumlin.
Hey, how you doing?
Let me apologize about the last time that we spoke. I know that I think I called you on psychedelics, and I really shouldn't have. Do you by chance ever, you never get high, do you? I mean, I know that's kind of a crazy question, but.
Yeah, it's an interesting question to start off with. If you mean, do I use psychedelics? No. But have I ever used marijuana? I have before, yes.
Well, because I was listening to some of your other interviews, and you never really had an example. So because of that, you kind of had to figure out your own way. But how do you stay so grounded? Like, who kept you so level-headed to not, indulge in, certain, things that like I do, you know what I mean?
So I didn't have a role model. So when I became an adult, when I got on my own, which was very early, I was effectively on my own since I've been 18. That's many decades ago. So yes, I did have to do trial and error and figure out adulthood/manhood on my own. As far as what kept me away from, I guess you're referring to like drugs and things like that. Well, I guess I wasn't around that either. I wasn't around drugs when I was a kid. I wasn't around violence or alcohol. I had a pretty calm life when I was a kid. So that I was kind of scared to do it.
Wow.
So after I got older, I decided to, let me try some of this stuff. I've wanted to, as far as marijuana or whatever it is, I wanted to, but I was scared because of all the propaganda. It's a drug. Oh, it's a drug. Oh my God, it's gonna take over your mind. Ah!
Right.
So, as a kid, I bought into all that propaganda. And so I stayed away from it until I became an adult.
That's amazing because, and like now to see you, it's like you're basically giving people's lessons on like how to, speak more confidently in public, how to be basically more confident in general.
I am a men's confidence coach, and I basically talk about and coach men around confidence, communication, and sexuality. So the podcast, most of the interviews on the podcast reflect some aspect of that. And sometimes we go into some cultural issues, like when you were on the program a few times, you were talking about, drugs and drug safety and how to do things like that, and you were going on a drug awareness campaign. So
Right. Sometimes
sometimes we do that, but mainly we stick to confidence, communication, and sexuality as it relates to men.
Love it. I must have listened to you watch about, 4 of your podcast interviews. And it's amazing because you talk about your struggle and, growing up and whatnot. And like you talk about how when you were growing up for various reasons, you didn't really get along with too many kids because you didn't have really many similarities with, kids your own age and whatnot. And of course, you talk about, just like normal adult strugglehood. But I noticed that in none of your interviews, and I just only bring this up because, it is such an inspiring thing, but you never mentioned in any of your interviews that you are in fact blind, right?
No, I never mention it because I find that to be somewhat irrelevant. I mean, being blind is part of my story, certainly. So, I was recently on a show that wanted to talk about my whole life story. So obviously, me being blind is part of my story, but I don't find it relevant to bring up every single moment. Like when I'm doing a podcast and I'm interviewing people, my blindness is not really relevant. If I'm talking about, different topics around confidence and masculinity, I'll mention blindness if it relates to the topic, but most of these things don't relate to it unless we're directly talking about my life story or a story I would share to illustrate a point.
Right. No, it's just, that whole thing in itself is just such an amazing struggle. And, I think that most people would, for lack of a better word, try to exploit that to, make their story more, to like make it so that they can, be more to like basically like stand out more. But with you, I see that you have enough confidence in just yourself and your abilities that you don't even use that or even try to, exploit it. That's just amazing. Where does that strength come from if it isn't from a like parent or if it isn't from somebody who, do you have a really close belief with a higher power or?
Well, here's what this is. So I'll get to the higher power stuff soon too, which I do, but I'll get to that. So when I was a kid, I was sighted when I was a kid, but I was still visually impaired, even though I could still see. And then I went blind when I was 11 years old. So when I was a kid, I was already exposed to blind people before I was blind. I was already exposed to things like Braille and large print and all these things before I was actually blind myself. And then after I went blind, they immediately started giving me services. Like they changed my school to somewhere different. They gave me mobility lessons and taught me how to use a computer. And this is when I'm 11 years old. So what I got from that is that blindness doesn't make any difference in who you are. My blindness didn't change me. It changed everyone else around me, but it didn't change me. So I saw, and I still see, blindness as unremarkable, I should say. It is an unremarkable feature. There are lots of blind people, all of differing ability levels, but there are sighted people with different ability levels. I just think that blindness is not something to make a big deal about. I'm still the same person. Now, obviously, the blindness plays into my life story. You know, maybe we'll get into that later about things like that. But as far as my feelings about blindness, to me, it's just not that big of a deal. It doesn't stop me from doing what I want to do.
That's amazing. And I know right now what you've been doing, I've been seeing at least online, is that you're doing, is it some type of like seminar, right? It's like a 6-week program. Is that what that was? Tell us more about that.
What? Repeat that again. I'm sorry.
I noticed that right now you're doing, is it a seminar right now? I think it is, where it's like the Core Confidence Life. I know it's like an event on like Eventbrite. So it seems like it's like a whole thing.
You're talking about the workshops.
Oh, the workshop. That's what it was, the workshops, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, you know, as I said before, I am a men's confidence coach. And so we've been starting workshops. And so the last workshop I held was Unbreakable Confidence for 2021. And we basically talked about the basics of self-confidence, how to communicate your boundaries and principles to other people. And we talked about how to have better sex with your partner. Not technique-wise, but more philosophical and psychological. So we talked about those for a while. And there'll be more podcasts. There'll be more, well, of course, there'll be more podcasts. And there'll be more workshops coming up around topics surrounding those three things.
So if somebody wants to attend one of your workshops, do they have to go out to where you are in New York, or have you done the whole virtual thing?
These are online workshops, you know, typical Zoom call. And if you're part of Meetup, you can look for Core Confidence Life on Meetup, or you can go to the website, coreconfidencelife.com. And when you click on workshops and events, it'll show you what's current.
Perfect. Yeah, because I've been looking at some of the advice that you've been giving, and you give some pretty remarkable, and the advice you give isn't really what usually other people give. I think one of them was like talking about all the reasons why you're insecure or something. Was that one of the reasons, or something like?
Well, we definitely talk about reasons why people are insecure and how to make them more confident, how to boost their self-esteem. You know, so yeah, I mean, there's always things I have to say about that.
Perfect. And is it true, Dennis? Are you somewhat of a singer? Because I know that you did the whole Pop Top show. Do you sing? You really sound like you'd have an amazing voice.
I don't sing professionally. Singing used to be a hobby for me. So I used to, when I was a kid, I would start making like little demo albums on cassette tapes. Hey, remember cassette tapes? So I still have cassette tapes here. I would make, you know, music albums on cassette tapes, but they were amateur albums. I'd make them from home. I had a friend when I was a kid who had a studio, and so I made them there. So I have a lot of amateur music albums, but they're really just hobbies. I mean, I have a background in public speaking, improv acting, and things like that. But when it comes to singing, you know, I do it because it's fun, it's entertaining, not because I want to be a singer professionally. But yeah, and
I feel like you'd have a beautiful voice. Like, do you think I could get you to sing something for us, Dennis? I know, putting you on the spot, but
there's a misconception, number one, about people with so-called nice voices. Not every speaker can sing. Not every singer can speak. So.
I was just thinking, I was like, with your whole background, I was thinking, he must be able to, have some pipes on him, That's what I was always thinking.
No, you know what? When I was in the music business, I was behind the desk. I wasn't behind the mic. When I worked for the talent agency and the nonprofit having to do with music, all those things, I was more one of the executives. I was more behind the desk. I was a person going out looking for talent and bringing people in. I wasn't the actual talent.
Love it, love it. Well, you should know that you made an amazing discovery when we discovered each other. Just want to say that, just to throw that out there. But Dennis, on this show, we like to talk about basically what people can do to be able to move forward during this crazy pandemic. What advice would you give to somebody who is maybe getting stuck, maybe with like confidence issues? Because Lord knows that everybody has confidence issues to begin with, but now with the whole pandemic going on, what advice would you give to somebody to actually continue on during this crazy time?
Well, first understand, we get caught up in worry, we get caught up with fear, and it's understandable because we don't know what's going on. Everyone thinks they know what's going on, but no one actually does completely. We've been on, people are on lockdown. You got to wear masks everywhere you go, all these things. So it definitely could feed into anxiety and fear. But we know something obvious is that we can't control everything outside of us. All we can control is what's going on inside of us, not outside. So the pandemic is going to be there until it's not there. And so what we do to move to the next stage is understand that it's not the events that happen outside of us, it's how we see them, how we process them. And so there are plenty of people that, from what I'm hearing, had a great 2020, for example. So really the year and the circumstances we live under doesn't matter. And all it matters on how we see it. So the first thing I would say is look at this situation as an opportunity to pay attention to things you haven't got a chance to pay attention to. Now, I know we're not on lockdown the way we were last spring, and there are plenty of people that has gone back to work. But for people who are still on lockdown, who are still bouncing around, take this time period to discover things that you haven't had time to do. For example, any hobbies that you feel, I've been working too hard, and so now I'm not working or I'm working from home. Is there something else I can do? Like maybe start a book that I've always been wanting to write. Maybe write a song I've always been wanting to write, speaking of music. Yeah. Maybe start a podcast I've always wanted to be starting. Maybe taking up a particular craft. There's all kind of online ways to learn. So take advantage of the extra time and use it to your advantage. Use it to the utmost effectiveness. So, spend more time getting to know your family, because, every day we work, we do this, the kids are going to school or whatever. So take this time to bond with your family more. Get to know them better. Sometimes we live with people and we're so busy, we don't actually sit down and spend quality time with our family or our kids or things like that because it's a business of the day. So this is a time for you to do that.
I love that.
Also, here's something I do recommend. This is something I definitely do recommend. And this one, if you don't hear anything I say, hear this. Please keep a daily routine. Even if you're home all day, get up. If you were going to work, shower, get dressed, have breakfast, have a routine. That's part of what's been keeping me sane, is having a routine, something that you can rely on every day to give your life that element of normalcy, even when things are not normal. I know, for example, on Monday morning, even though I'm not going out, I'm still going to get up and do my morning rituals, take the shower, eat breakfast, get dressed, sit down at my desk, and have a work day, even if I'm not going anywhere.
That's some great advice. Yeah,
keep routines, because if you lose your routine, a lot of people have been doing that during the pandemic this past year. You lose your routines, you lay in bed all day, you start eating sloppy, you become depressed, and then you're compounding the worry you may have about the pandemic with extra worry because you're not taking care of yourself.
That is some good advice, I think me and you probably didn't have as much of a hard time with that because me and you, worked from home before. But yeah, I can imagine with everybody else, that's some really good advice. So definitely, if you're watching this, please, just like Dennis said, keep a routine. And Dennis, if, of course, not if, but when the people want to find out more about you, they can find you on, is it thecoreconfidencelife.com? Is that where?
It's coreconfidencelife.com. You can find articles, you can find podcasts, you can find our major programs on there, events,
Perfect. Well, Dennis, thank you again so much for thank you for being here today. I really have to admit that me being on this side of it has made me really nervous. But you have been definitely my favorite and best interview. So thank you so much for helping me this make it a much better process. So I really appreciate it, Dennis.
No problem. Thanks for having me on your show.
All right, and we will be right back after this break. Thank you again. And welcome back to the Evans Explosion Show. I wanted to congratulate you on not spending all of your TV time watching the news, because although it's important to stay informed, the chaos that comes from the news is really not good for any of our mental stability. And just like a patient who doesn't think that they're going to get better, they won't. So if you obsess about getting sick, you probably will get sick. So cut down your TV time to about an hour a day. And in case you ever feel like you don't belong anywhere or that you're not a part of anything, just remember that you're a part of me.
Baby, I feel like I've traveled this whole world, and no one does it like you. When I grew up, I used to think that love was just a silly song, so overplayed that had no depth at all. But then you showed me so much. I wake up and see your face. Every doubt I ever had just melts away. I feel it in my soul. I need to say this a lot more. You're a part of me. You're a part of me. You're a part of. Yes, you're a part of me. You're my breath. You're my reason. The love of my life. Don't you ever.
And thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of the Evans Explosion Show. And you already know we're about to blow in 3, 2,